Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Customer Experience Behind the Scenes, where we look at CX beyond the jargon and uncover what truly drives meaningful customer experiences. I am Carl Charisse, your host, and I'm glad you're joining us now for Season 3, Episode 11. Whether you're a returning participant or tuning in for the very first time, you're a part of a community of CX professionals who believe that real learning happens through honest conversation and shared experience and practical insight. If you ever wanted to revisit any of the earlier episodes, you can find the full library available for replay anytime at questionpro.com. So for those just getting acquainted with me, I lead Horizon CX, a consulting practice dedicated to helping organizations embed customer experience into the fabric of their daily operations. Not as a project, but as a sustainable way of working. I'm also the creator of the CX Pro certification program, which has now helped more than 185 practitioners worldwide strengthen their CX skills and elevate their impact. And over the years, I've authored a couple of books. One is called CX Pro, a practical guide for the new customer experience manager, and another one entitled CX Pro Beyond the Basics. Both were written to support CX professionals as they grow from understanding the fundamentals to confidently applying them in real organizational settings. And recently, I expanded my focus with a new training series called Effective Customer Communications. And that's built around the idea that every memorable experience, whether good or bad, ultimately comes down to how we communicate with customers and with one another. And on a more personal note, my latest book is entitled Rock and Roll Underdogs, Hidden Gems Within the Shadows of Stardom. And that was released on October 28th. That's been gaining some wonderful attention, thankfully, and it celebrates musicians whose extraordinary work have never reached the mainstream spotlight. And that theme actually resonates rather deeply with me and reflects the perseverance and passion I see throughout the CX world. So with that, let's shift gears and dive into today's conversation. CX Behind the Scenes is designed to be interactive and real, grounded in authentic stories, challenges, breakthroughs from people on the front lines of customer experience. So as we go along, please use the chat to share your thoughts, reactions, experience, ask questions. Let's make this a dialogue and not just a webinar. So what I'd like to do here is I'd like to turn this over to Chris for a moment here to give us a short introduction to Question Pro.
Thanks so much, Carl. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Diakuski with Question Pro, and I want to welcome you to another episode of CX Behind the Scenes. Today's session is one I'm really looking forward to because we're talking about something that's often overlooked in the CX human energy behind transformation. Most CX programs, they sound great on paper. I've seen that many, many times in my role at various companies, but too often they lose momentum in practice. Metrics and dashboards can tell us what's happening, but not why change isn't sticking. At Question Pro, we believe data should be the spark for transformation, not the finish line. Our customer experience platform helps organizations connect the dots between customer feedback, employee engagement, and business outcomes so that insights actually lead to action and lasting change. It's about creating flow, not just reports, and I'm sure we're all very used to that. And that's why today's topic couldn't be more aligned with what we believe. Our guest, Alain, Customer Transformation Architect, will share how story, resonance, and flow can help leaders move from busyness to real impact, building movements that energize teams, create experiences that truly stick. We're thrilled to have Alain here with us today, and I know we're going to leave this session inspired to think differently about what transformation really means in CX. With that, I'll hand it back over to Carl to kick off today's conversation and introduce Alain.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chris. And so before we dive into today's conversation, let's do what we normally do here. We have our usual quick poll to set the stage, and we're talking about transformation today, real transformation that kind of goes beyond dashboards, toolkits, and slogans. So here's the question. What do you think is the number one reason most CX transformations fail to stick? Is that the effort that never begins with a compelling stories that gives people something to believe in? Is it that leaders push metrics over meaning? Maybe employees don't feel connected to the change, or maybe organizations just lean too heavily on toolkits and roadmaps and never translate that into real action. Or is it that the culture just resists anything that's unfamiliar? So let's take a moment and share that perspective. And we'll look at the results in a minute here and see how your view compares with that of what Alain and I have to talk about here. So I'm going to use my cell phone and do the QR code here and join in that way. I get to answer the question too. And there's got to be more than 3 of us here. Come on. There we go. So it looks like the top vote getter here is too many toolkits and roadmaps and not enough action. And a little bit of leaders push metrics over meaning. Employees don't feel. So nobody said no compelling story behind the transformation. I thought that was an interesting omission here, that we didn't get anybody on that one. But anyway, we'll get to that. So today's guest is someone whose work in the CX field stretches far beyond the typical definitions of customer experience. I actually bought his first book, and I can hold that up so you can see that here. So You Want to Be Customer Centric. That's back in 2011, when I was at my early stages of my own CX journey. And that book has more handwritten marks in it than the 99 printed pages that it has, which tells you how much it influenced my thinking back then and continues to actually shape it this way I approach my work today. For more than 3 decades, Alain has been helping organizations from Lexus to Generali to Grant Thornton, Bordeaux Wines, I want to know more about that, and many others, driving what he calls premium profit through customer transformation. His teams have influenced the experiences of more than 500 million customers and over 1 million stakeholders worldwide, earning #1 and top 10 rankings and creating hundreds of millions of dollars in value along the way. Alain describes himself as a customer transformation architect, and the phrase fits him perfectly. His focus isn't on surface level improvements, but on shaping. What the heck? Oh my gosh, hold on a second here. I have no idea what that was or why that happened, but I have to figure it. He means had something to do with transformation. Holy moly. Anyway, let's get back to this. Alain, he joins us from a small village near Brussels where he's not on assignment. You can find him walking in the woods or catching up on another episode of Star Trek. It's a pleasure, Alain, to have you here with us today for conversation. Hello.
Hi, Carl. Thanks for having me.
And I don't know what that interlude was all about, but something happened in the background. I had to shut that down. So
I didn't see
it was
anything happening apart from you getting
band
shocked.
going on here. Had music related. Before we get into today's topic, I usually start by asking my guests a little bit beyond their professional world. You mentioned walking, and you mentioned catching up on episodes of Star Trek. What else brings you joy? What keeps you grounded outside of work? Something that gives us a glimpse into what you are and who you are when you're not helping organizations transform.
Oh, lots of things. I mean, lately I've been a lot I like trying out stuff that I don't know. So like for the first time, whether that is, going to a fortune teller or going into some sort of I mean, the other day I was actually sitting down with a Buddhist monk for a ceremony. I'm not Buddhist, but they basically, it was like just to see what happens. So I like trying out stuff. These days, I'm very much into all immersive experiences and immersive theater. Like been to ABBA now 3 times in London.
Wow.
Just to really, just like being immersed in new experiences. So if I summarize it, I kind of like doing that. It's always a surprise.
Yeah, it's surprising what you can learn from those tangential disciplines, right? You can bring that into the current thinking, into transformation. I do a lot in music, and you can tell
Yep.
inadvertently came up in the background. And I learned lots from that field that applies to CX, and I post about that incessantly on LinkedIn.
No, it's one of those things where by looking at what other people are doing right now, for instance, I'm doing an analysis of science fiction literature and turning that into design guidelines for AI, because a lot of the sci-fi writers have been thinking about where AI is going. However, we're trying to figure it out, like how to connect to customers, how to deal with privacy and all these things. But these guys have already figured it out. So I love blending these different, ideas and ways of looking at the world. And I'm sure that from music perspective, there's again things.
That's interesting because, AI is kind of sci-fi in a way.
It is.
Until we figure this thing out, right? All right, let's start here with some really basic things here. Okay, so many CX programs, they look good on paper. I've been part of that throughout my career. In your experience, what's the most common reason that CX efforts, I want to say stall, in some cases fail, and what differentiates, the organizations that actually get it and make it stick? How would you answer that?
I think the key reason why, there's usually a lot of talk and conversation whenever a new CX program gets introduced. But I think the key reason it, stops or doesn't go as far as it could, I think, is because people's heart aren't really in it. If it's like if I say I wanna get fit, yeah. As a human being, and I'm gonna go to the gym, yeah. But I don't really, and I go to the gym because that would be good for me, yeah. I have all the rational reasons, but my heart's not in it. Then the moment that it starts raining, I'm not going to go to the gym. Or the moment, there's something good there's a new episode of Star Trek, I'm going to watch that. And I think what happens a lot is that in those organizations where things stall, it's kind of like, customer experience is like going to the gym for rational reasons. So you buy these trackers to track your heart rate, you look at your scores, you look at all these things, and you rationalize it. But every sports coach and every personal trainer knows that the only way you're going to stick with a training program is if you love it. Yeah, if you really think it's the right thing to do in your heart. And I think this is where it kind of breaks down, in that CX very often is this rational thing. Yeah, we want to be number one in NPS. We want to be this. We want to be that. But it's all rational, and that, like, what's the ROI on NPS? All these beautiful things can all have value. I'm not saying that, but if your heart's not in it, it's not going anywhere. And I think the key of those who get it right, who really get it to go somewhere, is actually that they first focus on the heart, and then worry about all those metrics and tools and everything that goes with it, and all the, even the going to the gym, because if you love to work out, you can do it in your backyard, and you will do it in your backyard. And effectively, it's like, the best I mean, the world champions I've been allowed to work with were the guys from Lexus, which are like obsessed with customer everywhere. But in all the years I've worked with them, I've worked for 10 years on the Lexus experience, we never got an NPS target. We never got a target on what we had to be. But Toyoda-san, so the head of the Toyota Corporation, he basically just gave us like, I want you to behave like the best retailer in town, because that's who we are. Yeah. And all the focus went on encouraging that behavior in the organization and making it fun, making it rewarding, and actually just, let's do this kind of thing. And I think this is the big difference. Like the ones that stall are the ones who look at it as a program that's rational and, has to be worked out. The ones who really go the long way are the ones who start from the heart and then build all the tools. I mean, it's not like get rid of all the tools, but they start from that deeper emotion.
Yeah. And the usual, I mean, I need to explore that a little bit more, because I'm thinking here that the usual scenario is you've got organizational leadership, and then you've got this entity, if you will, in an organization that manages customer experience, whether it's a chief customer officer or VP of customer experience. So I always look at that as the heart has to be in it from that leadership position, first and foremost. I think you can't have that. The heart can be in it with the practitioner, but if the heart isn't in it at the leadership level, all bets are off. I mean, I've seen that personally, and then I've seen that in so many cases.
It makes it 100 times easier if the leader's pulling. I do think there is a little bit of, let's call it, opportunity for whoever's in charge of CX to get the leaders' hearts in it, because leaders are humans too. At the end of the day, and it may be a matter of changing the dialogue as well, and giving examples and actually, maybe not even responding to all the ROI questions, etc., but also bringing other dialogues, like which are more emotional, which are common sense, etc. And I have actually seen leadership teams shift. In one organization, basically, I remember it very well. We had a very skeptical leadership team. They were like bombarded with all the usual numbers, and and they just, their eyes just glazed over because they've got too much information anyway, so they didn't really care. And then we basically said, you know what, let's get rid of all of this stuff. And we got one slide with an image of somebody, let's say, holding up a certain finger towards the audience, i.e. the executives, and basically saying, you suck as leaders, and give them a whole series of audio clips from customers talking real about the organization. And at the end of that session, the number question didn't go away, but everyone in the room knew, whoa, we got to do something here. Yeah, we got to act. And that was a human thing. So I think there's two ways. If the leadership's not on board, you've got a hard ride. I mean, no debating.
Yep.
But there is ways of actually then getting to them by talking like, sort of like regular humans over kitchen tables, kind of thing. So I think that there is some opportunity for a two-way street.
If I can share a recent experience that I had here, and my opinion of a company might be colored by things that I've experienced or heard about an organization, but this had to do with my internet service here and where I live. And I had an occasion where I was unable to get my emails, so I had to call Xfinity. I can mention them because this is a good news story here. And I'm sure that leadership was behind the behaviors that I exhibited when I called their call center for help. I couldn't get my email. I called an initial 800 number, and I got first line support. And they understood exactly what was going on in my world, but they couldn't help me. So they sent me to the next level of support. which got to me to another kind of level of fix for my situation, but it wasn't completely fixed. And their attitude was, we're going to stay with you. Don't worry, Carl. We're going to stay with you until you're completely whole here. And they gave me the top level support. I spent 2 full hours on the telephone with Xfinity, and the problem was solved. And I was like, I sat back and I thought, that is really unusual. Usually, call centers are trying to get you off the phone. But to me, that service experience says more about the organization and makes me feel, now when I see Xfinity, I don't have that visceral reaction like, oh, damn you. I have that, my God, they'll work with you, I love that little story because it made me feel so good about Xfinity, even though, I'm not really a customer of theirs, but they had to help me out of my situation. So I don't know.
Absolutely.
If you
Absolutely.
run into
because it works both ways, yes.
So let's get to your formula here. You've got this formula, transformation. I love that because I'm a chemist by trade here.
Okay.
Delta equals SRF. Oh, that sounds so technical, right? Story times resonance times flow. And that's the formation of what you call the transformation code. Can you break that down in some practical terms? Like, how does each element contribute to meaningful and lasting change? I'd like to hear your story around that.
Yeah, sure. I came to that formula as like it's like been a 7-year journey of trying to figure out what are the key elements of making transformation happen. At one point, I had a formula which was about a whole page, which was too complex. So I felt smart, but it wasn't really workable. But working on it, trying to get it down to the essence of what transformation is about, I found that it's actually about these 3 elements. So story is basically a story that explains how we see the world. Yeah. So in other words, we all tell ourselves stories about how the world works. And transformation only happens when we get a new story. Yeah. So when something suddenly changed, the one we all experienced not that long ago was, hey, computers can talk back to us. Yeah. It's like, now now we've got AI, they talk to us. Suddenly, our worldview is changing and, everybody's like trying to make sense of that. But effectively what we're going through is a sort of a transformation because suddenly a new story entered our world. And the first part of the code basically focuses on that if you want to make transformation happen, you have to give people a new story that makes them look at life in a new way. Yeah. In very practical terms, recently we did a project of reimagining death care. So farewells, funerals, and things like that. And effectively there we kind of said like, okay, the transformation we're going for is we want to go from McFunerals. Yeah. I mean, I don't even think I need to explain what I mean by that because it's like a standardized funeral. And we all know what's wrong with it in our gut. Yeah. To meaningful farewells. Yeah. In the sense that we all know what that means as well. So effectively telling a story around that, what is a McFuneral, what is a meaningful farewell, is something that people immediately get. And the moment you've seen how that works, immediately you kind of go like, oh yeah, that's what they're talking about. And that's basically, and you can do that with any type of transformation from regular computers to AI. Another project we worked on is from reimagining the workplace from thank God it's Friday to thank God it's Monday. It's like instead of I have to go to the office on Monday, I can go to the office again kind of thing. Because it's like creating a new story. And not any story will work. That's where the second part of the formula comes in. Because resonance, the R for resonance, actually then means that whatever story you're telling me as a transformer actually has to resonate with me as an individual. I actually have to like that story because
I think you're part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta say, this is my story. I mean, when I say McFunerals to meaningful farewells, we've got almost 100% resonance on that one because people immediately get it and they go like, yeah. If I say AI first, that's a beautiful story. but not everybody resonates with that. Yeah, not
Yeah.
everybody likes that. If I say,
Mhm.
stop work, return to the office, yeah, that's a story, but not everybody resonates with that. Yeah, so it's like it's changed. So that's the second part. So basically, transformations only happen if there's a new story, which reframes everything, which basically resonates with the people. And then the final part is that, and this is very often a leadership job, that then acting on that story becomes the natural thing to do. So in other words, if we want to create a story where from now on, we're going to treat our customers as valued guests, and we're going to do this and this and this for them. But then and everybody gets like, yeah, this is a good idea. But then the organizations keeps getting in the way. People don't have the resources. I mean, like in your example, yeah, you wanna really help Carl on the phone, but instead of 2 hours, you got to do it in 3 minutes. All these rules are there. Effectively, again, your transformation kind of dies a death of 1,000 cuts along the way. And these three elements, they kind of work together in this is where the multiplication science comes in the sense that you need a good story, it needs to resonate and has to be easy to act on. If you introduce these three elements simultaneously, transformation happens. If one of them is slow or is not really developed, the whole thing starts unraveling. Because you take my AI first story, yeah, okay, it's a story, and we can buy a whole bunch of software to introduce it, but if the people aren't on the bus, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
And effectively, it's that way. The formula kind of works that way as a diagnostic to kind of see, like, where are we strong, where are we weak? Have we got a good story? Does it resonate? Do we help make people make it happen? And also, where if we know we're weak and we're strong, what do we need to do next? So that's a little bit. Did that make sense? Because I know it's a very condensed version of a whole book.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Now that leads me to just ask a question. I mean, this is a really general one. Transformation. I mean, if we were to put some parameters around this thing, how big is it? How much does it weigh? How far does it go? Because I teach about this in my CX Pro class. We talk about transformation, and I give as an example of transformation is a caterpillar evolving into a butterfly. That is transformation. Obviously, from something that looks quite different to something that looks even more different. Okay. So, how would you characterize transformation so that folks who are, yeah, I'm involved in that, but I don't know how big or small it is? I mean, I never called myself a transformationist at all, although I worked in organizations where I helped evolve certain practices in the organization. And that could be transformative, but I never said that about myself because I thought transformation had to be this huge thing. How would you define transformation in terms of size, form?
Yeah, it's at the same time very small and very big. It's kind of weird. I mean, we all know it. I mean, transformation is actually very easy because we all do it all the time. Yeah, it's like if I look at myself and I look at myself a year ago, I'm a different person, and a year from now, I will be different again.
Yeah.
Now, it won't be drastically different, but there will be changes along the way. So in a way, transformation is something that's slow and gradual. And okay, in the butterfly caterpillar example, that's kind of condensed in a very visual way. But for humans, it's usually, fairly gradual, in which there can be moments that suddenly accelerate everything. Like, the moment I became a father, I transformed. My whole life transformed.
Absolutely.
My
Overnight.
sleep transformed.
It's an overnight transformation.
Exactly. That's like, and what happens on the human side is, like, you've got either these small gradual things that happen to you, or big things that just where you just jump from one to the other, where you go from caterpillar to butterfly. In organizations, it's kind of similar in the sense of every organization is transforming. Even if you don't do anything, the organization will be different a year and a half, 2 years from now than it is today. That's how it works. The jumps are when you actually say, okay, now we're going to do something which accelerates that process into more or less orient a certain direction. Yeah, where we actually see, let's say, if we go back in 2 years, we actually see a different way of looking at the world, a way of looking of behavior that wasn't there before. Yeah. And effectively, transformation for me can be very small, very, step by step, because it's every time something changes in your mindset, something changes in the way you look at life and you behave that way, to very big. But that is either driven by dramatic things happening, like becoming a father, or, a business suddenly, I mean, I've worked with companies when the war in Ukraine started, suddenly a whole market disappears. Something big happens, or you give it time to actually evolve. Kind of philosophical, I know, but it's we're close to that realm.
I think we're talking, though, of change for the better. The transformation is a change for the better. Now, let me give you kind of an example, no names mentioned here, but I worked for an organization that seemed to change strategies every year. And so at one point in their evolution, they decided we want to become Six Sigma. Nobody actually, so the story around that, there was no story. So it goes right to your formula. And that's probably, and how would that resonate with me? Well, I got involved in the green belt training and all this sort of thing, right? But the organization hired all these people. They trained them all as black belts and green belts and Kaizen facilitators and everything. And then 2 years later, they decided, that doesn't work anymore. We're getting rid of that. So there you go. And you see that evolution, that transformation. And it was almost like a real kind of a downer, except for the people who earned their black belts at the company's expense, because they all went on to much better positions and probably more well-paid positions, right? Yeah. But I mean, it was just an example of, it's going to be transformation in the more positive sense, Yeah. They went down and then they tried something else. They were like strategy of the day or strategy of the year, which was problematic. So,
but
and that's leadership. That's in the leaderships. Yeah, that's right in their lap, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and that sounds to me, as you said, like there wasn't an underlying story to why, and the story is never related to a methodology or whatever. It's always related to, what are we trying to achieve here? Why are we doing this? It's close to purpose, but it's different, because it's like, it's more like, who are we? What do we want to do? What do we stand for? And that is something that doesn't really change with the methodologies. And then methodologies can come and go, but you keep going in that same direction. And you would have said like, it's not necessarily that Six Sigma is bad. What we've learned from it is this, but to achieve our goal, we actually now need to move to the following thing. And it all makes sense within the business, but yeah, that's not transformation. That's just methodology hopping, as I say.
Well, Alain, as it turned out, after the fact, we all found out what the real story was around that. They were looking to reduce costs and reduce expenditures in the organization, and Six Sigma didn't address as much as they wanted to reduce the costs. And so therefore they declared it ineffective and got rid of it.
and actually, but this is a beautiful case study, because currently I'm working with an organization who wants to be cost leader in their segment. And that is their goal. That's their stated goal, because the customers actually want that. Yeah, they are the cost leader, and they want, they've been drifting up a bit, offering too much experience, quote unquote. So costs have to go down. And we're looking at using some techniques to make that happen and still, keep customer satisfaction where it is. But effectively, the tools that get used are, this company was cost leader 20 years ago. Now they've drifted a bit, and they want to get back to that. The story stays the same. Yeah. And for the people in the organization, basically the thing is, okay, so now we're going to be using AI to be a cost leader. Okay, fine. And everybody goes like, but we're still being a cost leader here because we want to be the most affordable to our customers. Full stop. And that's, I think, where, just being honest about that can go a long way.
Yep. I want to get to some of I've seen a lot of questions coming in here. So let's see if we can get to a couple of these here. So Candace asks here, can you share an example where a CX initiative failed despite strong metrics and how it was turned around?
Ooh, one that jumps to mind was with and I don't know if that exactly answers the question, but I'll try, is we were working with a large telco operator where the whole CX program almost got scratched because we were hitting quite high NPS scores, and everybody was looking happy, and everything was going well. However, when we then started correlating that with actual customer behavior, we found that promoters were spending spending less than detractors. So actually, the amount of money that the company made from unhappy customers was higher than what it made from happy customers. In one country, that actually led the CEO to fire certain categories of customers to hit his numbers. But the program got under a lot of pressure because we were kind of like, yeah, but wait a minute, we're chasing these scores, we're chasing building on experience, building in costs, and at the same time, if we look at the numbers, the financial numbers, they don't really correspond. And what's worse, even like we had that case that detractors were even more, spent even more. Afterwards, we found out the reason they were detractors was because they were spending too much in their own view. But that was just beside the point. So what we had was a program that was under pressure. The way that got back on track was that we started digging deeper. And this was actually a lesson for me in metrics, in the sense that we were doing the standard metrics, like, how much does somebody spend? How long do they stay? All that sort of stuff.
Right.
We didn't have a metric for word of mouth. So how many customers do they chase away? How many customers do they attract? And what we actually found when we did some qualitative research into that was that there was a massive difference in actual financial value between those promoters and those detractors, in the sense that those detractors, even though they made more money to the business, they literally went around and started telling people, don't go to that telco, and that cost quite a lot of money. On the other hand, the promoters typically all brought in one extra customer a year, which was financially a gold mine. And effectively, so basically to answer, I think it was Candace, right? Candace's question. It's like, the initiative didn't necessarily fail because we had strong metrics. The initiative almost failed because, the metrics didn't really tell the story we thought they would tell. However, we managed to turn it around by looking beyond the obvious numbers. We actually found out about this by talking to customers. At scale, that was done through qualitative research, actually, just sitting down and ask, all the usual why and what did you do and all that sort of stuff. And what we found was actually that there were value drivers which we had ignored. And by surfacing those, the program got back on track and actually got more, funding and attention and everything.
Okay, so let me see here. We've been another question here from Sanjay asks, any best practice on translating CX metrics to an ROI when investing in improvements that require capital investment?
Yes. I'll try to make it short, because ROI in customer experience is I've broken 3 CFOs over it. And they were all like, and the last one literally gave me a team of people to for 6 months to try and figure it out. So, coming with a hard ROI on customer experience is not always an easy thing, if not virtually impossible. I've only seen it once, actually. The short version of it is basically say, okay, what is the list of things that need fixing, improving, changing, or adding on to the customer experience? Make that list. Identify the number of customers that are affected by each element on that list. Quantify that number in what have we got today in sales, margin, whatever the number is you want, and what are we targeting because of this change. So for instance, if 7% of, I mean, we had this with a dental company. If 7% of our customers don't renew the electric toothbrush, the little brush that goes on it, by themselves, and we can get half of them to renew that by introducing a program that is a subscription program that automatically sends them the new thing, that's going to make us so much money. It's going to cost us this much money to actually install it. If the first amount is bigger than the second amount, it's at least worth a pilot. Do that for every of the initiatives you've got lined up, and then make a hit parade that kind of says, like, and you can kind of organize it depending on the flavor of what leadership is looking for. This is going to make us money fastest. This is going to make us most money. And at least what you're doing that way is you're targeting, or you're starting to talk the language that they're used to from other programs. Because what I very often see is that customer experience programs, if you compare them to a new piece of software, the software guys come in and they kind of say, like, you implement this software, that's going to save us that much time, that's going to save us that much money. And hey, presto, here's your ROI. That's just assumption upon assumption upon assumption, but still, it sounds good. Customer people, very often, I've done this. I go in like, we're going to have happy customers and that's going to pay off someday. I think if you do it in the way that the other guys do it, where you basically say, this is the initiative, this is the amount of money we project on the following reasons that we're going to make, this is what it's going to cost, you can have an ROI, which basically links to an investment case. And if it's like a CapEx investment that you're making, that's actually good news, because then you can calculate the ROI over multiple years, so you don't have to write it off within the same fiscal.
So initially, it's always an educated guess, right? This is you using the best information you have to make an educated guess. And so this is going to give us the biggest leverage over here. Yeah. And if it does, fine. If it doesn't, then you reframe.
And this is just like any other investment case. Every investment case on the planet works on assumptions. Because that's and some assumptions are harder than others. But it's also about just being transparent about those assumptions and testing them, and then going up and down. And every financial person I know knows that. It's just about talking the same language.
Yep. In this keeping in the dental theme here, Brian asks how to drive CX in a low-use service industry like dental insurance, low touch and high pain points.
Definitely high pain points.
I know. I can relate to that.
How to drive CX? I think I think there's a number of areas there. I think I've done a lot of work in insurance, and with insurance, it's all, the key driver, despite everything, is that customers want you to be there when you need them, when they need you. I'm sorry. So when I've got a dental problem, I want you to be there. Yeah. So there's probably, and that probably means, and I don't know Brian's journey and what the peaks are on that journey, but I would argue that, when I need you, that's a peak. That's an important moment to me as a customer. Making sure that everything runs flawless at that point is already a very big jump. Yeah, with all the insurance work we've done, the key thing is when people need their insurance company, they want to have like solutions, or i.e. money, quickly. They want minimum administration. There's, I mean, and I'm sure that Brian's got a list of all the things his customers are looking for. It's actually being flawless there. That's one element. Because, and that may sound, not very CX oriented, because in the sense of what's the big experience? Well, the big experience is that you're frictionless. On the other hand, what you can do if you say, but wait a minute, we want to raise the bar and we want to create an emotional connection, then it is about being proactive about the communications and about the interactions with the customer, in the sense of thinking, why do they want good dental? Yeah, I'm making this up on the spot now. But if I go, for instance, when I worked with another insurance company, we had they had home insurance. And there we actually came to the conclusion that nobody really cares about a home insurance. Because what is a home insurance? You keep paying money into a pot and you hope that if you've got a problem, that somebody comes by to pay whatever costs you have. Yeah, which is not always the case, which goes back to frictionless. However, what we really found is that people don't really want money in their bank account. If my water main is, if water's coming out of the radiators or something like that, I want the radiator fixed. I don't need money in my bank account. And effectively, what we found there is that actually sending a guy over or sending a lady over to actually fix the radiator, and we pay the bill in the background, did wonders for actually customer satisfaction, customer happiness, and actually turned them into promoters, because like, you had my back. Now, I don't know the dental industry well enough to know what that you have my back moment is in dental. But effectively, if you look at why do people go to the dentist beyond just hygiene? What are they looking for? Is it about healthy life? Is it about good breath? Is it about whatever it is? Actually helping them achieve whatever that aspiration is. Yeah, I want good teeth because I'm about to go on a date and I want to have this big smile. How do we make my date successful? I mean, we can get very creative about these things. Taste the food better, whatever it is. Actually going to those places and exploring that can give you then the high. But I'd say the basics is be as effortless and frictionless as possible. And then if you want to have an emotional element, look at the aspirations.
It's funny. I think a lot of people are in dental avoidance mode because of the pain.
Yeah.
Pain points.
Imagine what would happen if you liked it.
Well, I do actually. In fact, I have a dental appointment coming up in a week from Monday, and I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I have a good relationship with my dentist. We share some common interests. He likes to build Legos. I like to build Legos. We have good conversations over this. So
there you go.
We got one here from Danielle. She asks, what's the best way to take an existing CX program and optimize it without upsetting existing team members? Oh my goodness. And I was in that scenario way back when I first started in this business of customer experience, because I watched and observed the organization I was working for and what they were doing and boasting the high satisfaction levels that none of the leadership team were believing was actually correct. And I looked into the situation and said, oh my God, they're not doing what they're doing is they're creating a program to give them 99% customer satisfaction numbers. So I had a conversation with my boss about that one day, and he turned around and said, hey, we think you're the guy we should have to run our customer experience for the company. Would you like to do that? And of course, why would I ever say no to that? So that's how I got in the business. But anyway, let's see what you can say here about what Danielle is asking here without upsetting. And I'll be honest, I did get the position and I did upset a lot of existing team members with what I was about to do, because it was transformational in what we were going to stop doing and what we were going to start doing.
And I think that there is always, I mean, it all depends on how much time you've got as well. In the sense, sometimes if you don't have much time, then you need to be a bit more directive than if you've got enough time to actually work it. However, I'd say the things that come to mind are already start with all the stuff that's good. Because it's never all bad. Yeah. So,
Right.
start with the stuff that's good. Then I mean, ideally have them discover the optimization areas in this by asking questions, by not going in and saying, that's wrong, or I would do it this way. You can play that card a couple of times, but not too much, because then you become the that wise nose that comes in and tells everybody what to do, which nobody likes. But actually asking the questions like, oh, I've seen this in another company. How would that work for us? Is that something we could use? Or, I look at those numbers and okay, but we've only got like a 4% response rate. Is that enough? What do you think? Yeah. And very often, people already can see, or by asking the question, you can point out the issues. And that way you make the list of things to optimize. Let's say the things that could be contentious, you make that list smaller and smaller. And then you can keep your aces for the things that might be really upsetting, or where you really, turning things into a new direction. But there, I would then say, before doing that, take a moment to again go to story, in the sense of try first to get alignment around what is it that we're trying to achieve. Yeah, what is the direction we're going for? And this is not about numbers. This is about the bigger thing. What do we want to mean for customers, for the organization? And get people excited about that. Then let them look again at what have we got now? What is the system we built? Is that achieving that? And get them to be brutally honest with themselves, also by showing transparency on your own doubts and all that sort of thing. And what I find is that people will struggle to let go of certain things, especially if they're identity based. And I worked a long time on this particular program, but then once they start seeing it, then it's going towards them, helping them save face, showing them that changing direction is actually good, and creating, I mean, it sounds a bit fluffy, but creating that safe space, that people can actually say, this is actually evolving. Change is good. I always go into every meeting saying, I hope somebody in this meeting is going to prove me wrong. And I mean that. And effectively, by displaying that behavior, it makes it easier for people to say it, actually, for themselves as well. So I'd say start with the good, get them to kind of ask them to see different ways by asking questions, by coaching, and come to a joint vision of what is the end result we're going for. And then kind of let them adapt for themselves, because usually people will get there. It's just a matter of,
you're absolutely right. I think, asking questions is always the non-threatening way to approach anything. It's what if type of questions. What if I've seen this, what if we tried this? How would you think that would work here? People just love to chime in and answer that. There was an audience question here, and I thought it was a good one, and I don't see it here, but I've got it in my, and it comes from Melissa. You talked a lot about the importance of story in driving transformation. And her question is, how do you keep the story alive over time? We've launched great narratives in my organization before, but they tend to lose energy after a few months. What keeps transformational story from fading? I thought that was a good question.
It's a very good question. There's two sides to it. There's keep repeating the story and start living the story. And I think the second part is even more important than the first part. In the sense of, keep repeating, that's just basic communications, and just stick to your story. It's like, don't do what you described with the Six Sigma guys, like strategy of the quarter, of the year. But the living the story is the key. And this is where leadership comes in. I remember once I was sitting in a meeting room where they basically were asking a similar question. I had the whole leadership. It was a large program, 50,000 people, global organization. And the leadership was also saying, yeah, we've done this again and again and again, and it keeps petering out. We don't that transformation doesn't happen. And they had a good story. I was like, okay, fine. It was a good strategy. It was customer anchored, etc. However, when it came to it, I said, like, there's only one thing I'm not hearing you say. And that is, you keep saying that the organization needs to transform, the people need to transform, we need a new mindset. What are you going to change as a leader in your behavior? How are you going to change? Because I cannot transform anyone. Nobody can. I cannot transform you. Nobody can transform anyone. I can only work on myself. So as a leader, what are the changes how are you going to live this story? If you say, we want customers, we want, basically in their case, they want to build a better personal relationship with their customers as a business. Okay, so how are you going to do that, and how are you going to make your people able to do that? Because that speaks 10 times louder than any communication you send out. If suddenly you go like your call center from earlier, and you talk to the customer as long as you need. I had it recently with Amazon. I had I got escalated upon escalated without even asking for it, because they were going to solve the problem. Yeah.
Right.
Why? Because probably all the way up to Jeff Bezos, somebody said, we're going to give our people the time to do this. And basically, okay, I got fired from that meeting when I kind of asked, how are you going to change as leaders? Because they clearly didn't want to. Okay, fine. You win some, you lose some. But I'd say, to answer the question, it is about living it. It's about really sitting down as leaders, and everybody can be a leader at every level in the organization, and kind of say, okay, how am I going to live this story to my team? And basically allocating resources, displaying behavior. If it's about connecting to customers, actually going and talking to customers. At Toyota, there's a rule: you cannot, and this goes all the way to the top, you cannot take a customer decision unless you've actually spoken to customers, if you've gone to the ground, you've actually done the work. And leaders do that. And effectively, it's like that. Just bring the story to life by living it. I mean, this is the ultra short version. Obviously, there's lots of nuance.
Yeah.
Go there.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, you have to exhibit the behavior. I mean, if I said in an organization, you all need to be kind to one another, and all of a sudden then I go and I reprimand somebody in public, well, I'm not exhibiting the behaviors that I'm asking the rest of the organization to exhibit. So, I mean,
Exactly.
We have only a little bit of time here, but I had some what I call lightning round questions I wanted to ask you. These are like 1 or 2 word answers. Remember that, 1 or 2 word answer. So let's see how these go. What's one habit or ritual you rely on to reset your focus on a busy day?
Qigong.
What is it?
Qigong. That's
okay,
Chinese
Qigong.
meditation.
Okay, all right. What's one book outside? It is. What's one book outside of the business world of CX that has influenced you to think about transformation? Something completely outside of the X.
The Tao of Winnie the Pooh.
Okay. What's the most surprisingly human moment you've seen in a boardroom? And I'm sure you've seen a few.
People crying because the strategy felt right.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. What's one experience you've had as a customer that still makes you smile?
Ooh. In Japan, I went to, okay, this is more than 2 words. We went to have a dessert, and underneath our dish, there was a little personal note, because the waiter had heard us discussing that we were going to another site, and they basically just wished us a nice little visit with a little tip of where we could go next.
Aha. If you weren't working in transformation at all, what a completely different career could you imagine yourself doing?
Theater.
Theater. Cool. Artsy. Okay, so this is a closer. When do you think businesses will finally be done transforming? Or is that like waiting for the last episode of a show that never ends, or in the case of a new Spinal Tap movie, the end continues?
I hope they'll never be done transforming, because that's when they stop evolving.
I like that. Yep. It's a job that's never complete. And we never want it to be complete.
Correct.
Because it means that we've finally reached the end. Why would we want to reach the end? That's why the end continues for Spinal Tap.
Exactly.
Anyway, we're out of time. We're out of questions here, but I want to thank you so much, Alain, for your insights here today. I would remind people that you've got this book called The Transformation Code, which is a really good book. I've only gotten to the first couple of chapters here, but I'm eager to continue reading it here. And before we close out today, I want to make sure that you mark your calendars for our next episode, which will be on Tuesday, December 19th. We'll begin that one an hour earlier than usual. So it'll be 10 o'clock Central versus 11 Eastern. I'm in Eastern time. And I'll be joined by Bruce Temkin, one of the fairly well-known and respected voices in the field of customer experience, co-founder of the CXPA. And Bruce will be diving into some of the most pressing issues shaping the future of CX, the rise of AI, the growing complexity of customer ecosystems, and the very real sense of human disconnection that so many organizations seem to be grappling with today. So we'll talk about that, what these forces mean for CX leaders, how to stay grounded amid the noise, and where the discipline needs to evolve if we want to keep customer experience both relevant and authentically human. It's going to be an insightful, honest conversation, one that I think will resonate deeply with anyone trying to balance technology, empathy, and organizational reality in this rapidly shifting landscape. So I hope you'll join us for that session. As always, thank you for being part of customer experience behind the scenes. We'll see you all next time. Take care. Cheers.